Hello and welcome everyone to the Universal Peace Federation. My name is Ray Lapalkin, and at the Universal Peace Federation, we're an international and interreligious network of individuals and organizations, including representatives from religion, government, civil society, and the private sector, and we're dedicated to achieving world peace. An NGO in general consultative status with an Economic and Social Council of the United Nations, UPF supports the work of the United Nations, particularly in the areas of interfaith peace building, peace education, and the strengthening of marriage and family. And our program today is titled The Role of Media in Advancing Civility. And our guest speaker today is Tami Pyfer, and this is a recent webinar that we had with our International Media Association for Peace Association. And Ms. Pyfer is the Chief of Staff and the Director of Operations for Unite. And she has co-sponsored a very interesting program with some other people, and it's called the Dignity Index. We're seeing so much divisiveness today in America, and particularly in the political sphere, and they've created an index where we can judge people's presentations on whether they're trying to incite and be angry, or they're really trying to be peace builders. And so it's a very interesting system they've set up. So please enjoy this presentation. And this program, this seminar is sponsored by the International Media Association for Peace, and we call it at UPF IMAP. It's one of the associations of the Universal Peace Federation. And IMAP strives to be an open forum in which journalists and scholars can discuss issues freely and promote the defense of human rights, and by promoting universal values leading to mutual prosperity and peaceful coexistence in our global community of nations around the world. And our moderator today is Ms. Peggy Yujiri. Peggy also serves as the Executive Director of UPF in Colorado, and for over 40 years, she has been organizing and promoting interfaith activities both in the US and internationally. And she's also the founding member of the Interfaith Council at Stapleton, and the current president of the Asian Roundtable of Colorado. The Asian Roundtable is currently in its second year of a major project to address anti-Asia bias and hate in Colorado. And Peggy lives in Denver with her husband, Kenji, and they have 3 adult children. So Peggy, you have wonderful credentials. Perhaps in the future, we can have you as a panelist. We can explore further all these wonderful activities that you're pursuing. But for today, Peggy is our moderator. Peggy, welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Ray, for that wonderful introduction. I'm just so pleased to be able to be part of this program today, and I'm honored that Ms. Pyfer and Dr. Silova are going to be our panelists, and there have been people that have really taken initiative in creating addressing problems that we see in the world around us and taking initiative to try to find solutions, which is the only way to solve problems is, instead of complaining about them, get out there and try to do something about it. So I'm going to introduce Tami. Tami is the Chief of Staff and Director of Operations for Unite. And prior to joining Unite, she was the Education Policy Advisor to former Utah Governor Gary Herbert. And there she was involved in state-level policy development, coalition building, and stakeholder engagement. Tami held local and state elected office for 12 years, during which time she was actively involved in numerous civic, community, and nonprofit organizations. Tami's professional training is in early childhood and K-12 special education for students with severe disabilities. Before her appointment in the governor's office, she worked as a clinical instructor at Utah State University, teaching teacher preparation coursework and supervising student teachers. So she's really had her toe in quite a lot of different public positions. So we're very proud to welcome Tami Pyfer.
Thank you so much, Peggy. It's really a pleasure and an honor to be with you. I have to admit, every time I would read the emails about your organization and Universal Peace Federation, I could not get this song out of my head. I've had the great honor of singing with the Tabernacle Choir at Temple Square for 7 years here in Salt Lake City. And one of the songs that's often requested by the Tabernacle Choir is "Let There Be Peace on Earth." And so every time I get an email from you, I keep thinking those refrains of "Let there be peace on earth," and then the part that is really important, "and let it begin with me." That's the most important part of that song. And so just so you know, you've provoked a lot of thinking, and I hope actually my presentation today will touch upon the role that we each play. Let it begin with me, that we play in this search that we have for peace and the work that we're doing with the Dignity Index. So with that, let me share my screen, and I'm really excited to speak with you today about the Dignity Index. Let me just start here. And kind of back to something you had just said also, Peggy, is this idea of solving problems. We believe that we have come upon a tool that will help augment the efforts of so many in the peace building space to ease division, prevent violence, and to solve problems. And I look at this very much as a problem solving tool. So we do a lot of work with the group More in Common, who does research on our divisions on polarization and peacemaking and peace building efforts throughout the world. And in a recent report, this was their Hidden Tribes report. They said that in this era of social media and partisan news outlets, America's differences have become dangerously tribal. This is not news to us. This is not new information. We all are probably living this experience every day. And it's fueled by this culture of outrage and people taking offense. And they go on to say that for the combatants, the other side can no longer be tolerated, and no price is too high to defeat them. One of our colleagues says that this is not just a zero-sum game, it's a negative-sum game between the winners and the losers. The More in Common group goes on to say that these tensions are poisoning personal relationships, consuming our politics, and putting our democracy in peril. And I bet I would not be far off the mark to assume that nearly every listener today to this webinar has experienced some type of a problem or a constraint in personal relationships due to the political climate that we find ourselves in. I know I have. I know it has affected my own family, my personal family, extended family. And it's really something that's quite painful. And as you step back and look at it, we think, all of this, all these problems for what? You know, what are we fighting about in reality? So in this More in Common report on the Hidden Tribes, it shows, you know, the breadth of the different political parties. They have what they call the wings. And then look at this group in the middle, what they're calling the exhausted majority. And you've probably heard that term before. I believe that those of us engaged in this work, are the exhausted majority. And my colleague, Tim Shriver, will add that we're not just the exhausted majority, we are the starving majority. We are starving for a better way. We are starving to repair these relationships in our families, in our communities, in our country. So in 2019, just shortly before I joined the Unite group, the team began to explore the causes of the distress, the polarization, and the cultural division in our country. They conducted polls, they traveled the country talking to youth groups, they consulted different experts, and they did a lot of reading, and I mean a lot of reading. And their basic conclusion was this, that we're in the midst of a spiritual or cultural crisis. And it's a crisis that's created the collapse of shared sense of meaning, purpose, and trust. And the mindset that produced this crisis cannot solve it. And another thing that I love to hear Tim say is that only the problems of the whole can only be solved by the whole. So all of us are part of the solution, and we cannot use the same mindset that produced this crisis to solve it. The crisis has been precipitated by the weakening of institutions, and there's a lot of data on this, on how our institutions of religion or civic or education, that they have deteriorated over time. We don't see people engaging like they used to. And we believe that the crisis has been exacerbated by the outrage industrial complex, something that Arthur Brooks writes about in his work. And that media and politics are in an open conspiracy to really elevate fear, anxiety, and othering. And they make a lot of money off of us, off of getting us to fear, distrust, and hold each other in contempt. So our basic prescription from our early work at Unite was that we need new skills, new stories, and new solutions. And our mission then became focused on developing concepts or products capable of creating or championing this emergence of what we're calling a new culture of us. So one of these tools that we have developed is the tool that I will be visiting with you about today. So we believe that the problem, when you boil it all down, isn't that we disagree on policy or issues or our differences economically or politically or culturally. It is that we have this addiction to contempt. As Arthur Brooks writes in his book, Love Your Enemies, we have a cultural addiction to contempt, an addiction abetted by the outrage industrial complex, and it's tearing us apart. He goes on to say that if we want to solve the polarization problem of today, we have to solve the contempt problem. We believe that contempt has become really the language of political speech in America. And the rise of racism, anti-Semitism, and violence are evidence of that. Amanda Ripley writes about this quite a bit. And in her recent book, High Conflict, she says that political speech, we know from the research, can incite violence. She goes on to say that political speech can also reduce the likelihood of violence. Amanda has been called in to consult with members of Congress on how to prevent violence. And it goes back, she says, I talk about their speech. I talk about the way they are speaking to and about their political opponents and to different issues facing the country. And speech plays a huge role in preventing violence. So we define contempt as this, a feeling of disdain and disgust for another person or group. When you're feeling contempt, you see yourself above other people. Dignity, on the other hand, is the inherent worth that we all have from birth. Instead of seeing myself above you, I see myself in you. I see a part of myself. I see the humanity of me within you. We believe that the solution to contempt is dignity. And often when I talk about this, I can just feel the energy in the room kind of start to slowly let down and go, really? Dignity? That's the best you've got? Contempt is so strong, and dignity it can seem like a soft word or a soft approach. We believe otherwise. We believe it's a very powerful tool. This comes from one of our colleagues, Dr. Donna Hicks, who spent her career in international conflict resolution work across the globe. She worked with Desmond Tutu in Northern Ireland. And in fact, her work there prompted Bishop Tutu to ask her to write a book about her work. And when he asked what she would write about, she said, I would write about dignity. I would write about the power of dignity to solve these intractable conflicts that we have all over the globe. And so that's what she did. She wrote a book called Dignity, and Bishop Tutu wrote the introduction to her book. And she says that our longing to be treated with dignity is the single most powerful force motivating our behavior. It transcends race, gender, ethnicity, and all other social distinctions. Dignity, she says, is our inherent value and vulnerability. It's different from respect. We are all born with this inherent value. Everyone should be treated with dignity. Respecting you and respecting your choices is another matter, but I can still hold people in dignity, even if I don't respect necessarily their positions or their actions. He says we all want to be treated like we matter, and it is so powerful to offer someone that treatment and offer them this feeling that they matter. I hold you in dignity. So we believe that dignity can solve the contempt problem. We believe that our differences are not or our division is not caused by difference. And it's not caused by disagreement, but it's caused by contempt. And when contempt breaks us apart, we believe that dignity can bring us back together. A lot of people look at the title of our nonprofit organization, Unite, and say, oh, you just want us to unite and be nice to each other and all agree and all hold the same opinion and unite against or unite around one single opinion. That's not true. Yes, we want you to be nice. I'm not saying that's not true, but we want diversity. We value diversity. We want everyone to bring their opinion, their ideas on policy, their ideas on different initiatives that the country could take. We want you to bring that to the table, but we do want people to unite around one core principle, and that is that everyone should be treated with dignity and that no one should be treated with contempt. And we believe that it is only through treating people with dignity and uniting around that core principle that we can begin to solve the problems that are facing our communities, our families, and especially our country. So the difficulty of promoting dignity is that it's really hard to maximize what you can't measure. I look back in my experience as a special education teacher, and if we're trying to increase or decrease problem behavior, increase appropriate behavior, even increase academic gains, how do I know that my intervention's working if I can't measure what that behavior looks like? So this goes to the premise of our dignity index. And this quote comes from Representative Emmanuel Cleaver from Missouri. This was in the summer of 2021. He was speaking in front of a congressional hearing on the modernization of Congress. And he said, there are agencies and organizations that score us on everything we do, except there's not a single organization that monitors and scores us for decency and civility. So it's easy to come to the conclusion that that's not important. Luckily, we were working on the dignity index at this time. As I watched this hearing, it validated this work that we were doing. And I thought, if you could just hold that thought for a moment, we're coming. We're bringing a tool for this. So this is where we come now with our dignity index. This comes from our website, dignityindex.us. You can go to the website and get in-depth information on the index and how it works. And the index is an 8-point scale. So it measures speech from contempt at the low end, from 1 to 4, and dignity on the top end. We have to be careful to point out that we are not scoring people. We are scoring speech. As I think we can all appreciate, we could fall along the scale on any given day personally, on any given subject or situation that we might be faced with. I may wake up at a 3 some days and think to myself, those people are ruining everything. And when I catch myself, I try to move myself up the scale to a 5, a 6, or 7. And on my very, very best days, which might be rare, but maybe the rare 8. But we're not scoring people, we're scoring speech. So when you go to our website, dignityindex.us, you immediately come to the pledge, and we're asking people to take a pledge, and it's a pledge to treat people with less contempt and with more dignity. So the index isn't meant to be used like for everything. It's meant to be used for language that's spoken in moments of conflict. And it's not that we disagree or the fact that we disagree, but it's how we disagree. And as we apply the index in these instances, it can reveal how we treat each other when we disagree, or when we're angry, or we're hurt, or we're afraid. I often think of times when, not when I'm angry, but I'm very fearful and I need to find someone to blame. And I go to the dignity scale and I'm down on the bottom of the scale because I have found someone to blame for my fears or my anxieties. This is what the dignity index can be used for. It can help reveal that to ourselves. So as I mentioned, we've got the low end of the scale, which is the contempt end, and that's 1 through 4, and the dignity end of the scale, which is 5 through 8. I'm going to just walk you through this. I'm going to start in the middle. It's kind of easier to see how we might descend down into contempt, and then how we can move up into dignity. So these are kind of just general statements that really mark what the feelings are or the language can be at this level. So when you're at a 4, your thought is, we're better than those people. I don't trust them. I just don't trust them. 3 is not just that I'm better than those people, but we're the good people and they're the bad people. It's us versus them. And for anyone that's been involved in politics extensively, I've been an elected official for 12 years. I was an elected official for 12 years and then in politics at the state level for another 7 years. It's really easy to fall into this trap that we're the good people and they're the bad people. My piece of legislation or my policy change is the good one and yours is the bad one. And it's me versus you. And I've got to win this because we use this language. Listen to the language we use. It's a battle. I got to win this political battle. We use the language of war. When you get to it too, it's not just that we're the good people and you're the bad people or us versus them, but you're evil. Those people are actually evil and they're going to ruin our country if we let them. It's not us versus them, it's us or them. And I have to tell you, I'm on a lot of email lists and I get a lot of political fundraising requests from the left and the right, lots. And there was one that came through a couple of weeks ago that had almost this exact language in it. This was someone raising funds. It was a politician raising funds and said, those people will ruin our country if we let them. So I need you to send me $50 was the appeal. But you see this language a lot. And I think people that use this language are not cognizant of the fact that they are using the language of contempt. I certainly, when I started working with the index, never saw myself as a contemptuous person. I get along with people. I didn't have public battles. I didn't call people out in public meetings. We had really vigorous debates. But in my head, there were times in my head where I'm going, you're ruining our country. You're ruining, education. You're ruining, our road system or whatever it might be. And it's me versus you. So even in our heads, even if we don't say it out loud, we have to realize it as we start to think these thoughts in our head. It can lead to language that then leads to policy decisions or dialogue that we have publicly that then leads us down this road of contempt where you get to the bottom rung, which is they're not even human. I mean, you're ruining the country. If we let you, you're not even human. It's my moral duty to destroy you before you destroy me. And you see this language in genocide. You see this all over the world in situations where it has devolved to genocide. In Rwanda, in Germany, in too many places. And these actions started with language. They started with speech, which is why we believe words matter. Let's get to the happy part of the scale. When you are at a 5, you've lost this need to blame someone and lost the contempt, and you're kind of entering this neutral territory, which is the other side has a right to be here and a right to be heard. It's their country too. So 5 is fairly neutral, but you're on the positive side. 6 is when you say, I always talk to the other side, and I'm going to search for those values and those interests that we share. I'm going to find those things that are in common. I'm going to start seeing myself in you. And so you're looking mainly for things that you have in common or that you share. And then as you work your way up the scale, 7 is I'm going to look beyond the things that we share. I'm going to find those things that we don't share, why we're different, things that we may disagree on. And I want to fully engage with the other side, even on these values that we don't share, because I want to find out where they're coming from. I want to know what made you have that position, that policy position. I want to know why you feel it's so important to take a position which might be polar opposite of my position. So no longer am I looking just at those things that we do agree on. We're looking for those things that we may disagree on. And then number 8 is that we believe that everyone is born with inherent worth, and therefore we treat everyone with dignity no matter what. Now think about this as a problem-solving tool. We've talked about this a lot as far as political life. And when you're in a campaign, and we've had pushback by people saying, well, I can't campaign at a 6, 7, or 8, I will never win. I will never be able to show the difference between me and my opponent. And there is a case to be made about pointing out how you're different from your opponent in a political race. But we believe that you can make those cases staying on the top end of the scale, staying at a 5, staying at a 6. But when you get elected and you are the representative of the people who has been elected to solve problems, then you should be living up here at the 6, at the 7, at the 8, and using those tools of dignity to solve the thorniest problems facing our country and our communities. So we felt like we needed to test this tool out. We wanted to get it validated to see if it was valid and reliable. And so we entered into a pilot project for the 2022 midterms last October. And we did it here in Utah. We have connections in the state, but we also had some help with researchers here in Utah that had done this type of work before. And the questions that we wanted to answer were, can this be built? Can it be accurate? Can we accurately score political speech like we think we can? And can we use this to start a conversation? And most importantly, will people be interested in the conversation? So this was our group of student coders. They are undergraduate and graduate students at the University of Utah who belong to they're associated with the Hinckley Institute of Politics and the Kempsey Gardner Policy Institute. We had a very diverse group of student coders. They were diverse ethnically, racially, they were diverse politically, especially politically. In fact, when we had the students get together to code or to score the political speech, there was always a minimum of 3 students doing the scoring, and they had to represent different sides of the political spectrum. And then we often would have separate groups of 3 score, and then those groups would get together to score to make sure that we were getting a variety of background and political interest involved in the scoring process. A lot of people worried about that. People from the left would worry that it was a right-leaning group of students scorers, and people from the right were worried that it was a bunch of liberal students, scoring the speeches. So we had a very diverse mix of students.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that presentation. This program that she is developed, the Dignity Index, is really gaining a lot of foothold, getting a lot of publicity, and I hope you hear about it. You heard about it here first, perhaps, but I think it could be a great asset in trying to bring more civility to the political sphere when we start doing advertisements and just the dialogue and debates and such. And we need to try to get away from the extremes that we're experiencing right now and find more of a clear direction for our country. So thank you for enjoying our program today. And as always, I like to promote the autobiographies of our 2 co-founders, Reverend Sun Myung Moon and his wife, Dr. Hak Chahan Moon. So they're complimentary copies. Please get in touch with me if you'd like one. Thank you so much.